Alright, welcome once again to my kitchen here at Trails Inn 62. Well, I'm going to be doing some more meals in a jar, and I'm going to be doing some chili. Now, I do my chili in layers. There's some people like to just make up the big old pot of chili and then put it in the jars and can it. That's okay if that's the way you want to do it. I like mine well proportioned. I like, when you start dipping it out of a big pot, you don't always get the same proportions in each jar. So by layering it like I do in each jar, then I get the proportions of what I want in the jars, and so then I get consistency throughout my can. Now I'm going to be doing this chili in 1.5 jars. Normally I do my meal in a jar in pints because, well, that's just me. It's just me, so I just use pints. But I like chili, so I'll make a little bit more chili. When I eat chili, I like to have more than just one bowl. So I'm going to make them in 1.5s, and I've got all my stuff prepared and ready to go. I had a couple of 10-pound of hamburger that I bought on sale, and I think it was about $2.50 a pound, 81.19, which is unusual. It's usually 80.20, but this was 81.19, and so it's pretty good beef. So I bought 2 logs of it, 10-pound logs, and I fried it up, and I've been using it in my meals in a jar recipes, and I got some more that I'm going to do. So I've got some that I put. It's been in the refrigerator because I fried it up. 2/3 or 3/4, half to 3/4 fried up is the way I do my hamburger when I can it and when I use it in my meals in a jar, because it will finish cooking in the processing. So I've got my hamburger here. I've got a little over 2 pounds of hamburger. It was in the refrigerator, so I put it in a bowl and kind of warmed it up in the microwave, because when I put my jars in my canner, and I'm using my Nesco electric canner, and it will do 5 pints. So I do that. I'd rather do 2 or 3 of those than get the big canner out anymore, because this is just so much nicer. Anyway, and I'm going to do it in 1.5. It will only hold 4 quarts, and I thought it would hold 5 1.5s, but when I measured it before and tried it, when I did my hamburger, I do my hamburger in 1.5s, because when I add hamburger to a recipe, if it calls for a pound, hey, I'm a carnivore. If it calls for a pound, I'd like to have a little more than a pound. So I do my hamburger in 1.5 jars. And I tried 5 pints in there. It didn't work. The lid doesn't shut right. The seal doesn't work right. So it will only take 4 1.5s, just like the number of quarts. That's okay. So I'm going to do it in 1.5s. And again, it's chili. Everybody has their different recipe for chili. Everybody likes their chili differently. Now I've got this recipe. I haven't tried it. It looked good. It looks like what I normally do when I make chili. So I'm going to use this recipe, and I've got all my ingredients out, and I'll go through those as I put them in. Like I said, I warmed up my ground beef in the microwave and warmed it up, and I'm going to be using some beef broth, and I've got it warmed up. I've got my jars in the sink in hot water warming up, and the reason is because it's going to be hot water put into the canner, and I don't want, these things have all been in the refrigerator. My tomatoes are cut up, and they've been in the refrigerator. My peppers that I'm using kind of a mixture of peppers here. I've got some peppers that I did for another recipe that were dehydrated, that I rehydrated. I had some of those left. I have some peppers still left in the freezer, and they're from like 2018, so maybe 2019, but anyway, I'm using some of those, and I have some jalapeno peppers that I had frozen in the freezer too, and so I mixed up the rest of the dehydrated peppers that I had with the frozen peppers, let them thaw out, and I mixed a little bit of jalapenos in with it. So I've got my peppers mixed up here that I'm going to use in it. Pinto beans. I put beans in my chili. Some people don't like chili with beans. I put beans in my chili. And I'm going to put those in dry. And because they'll cook in the pressure cooker, and that's how I do my beans when I can beans. And I've got my onions that I had chopped up from before. I have my spices, and we'll go through all these as I put them in. Now, my main liquid that I'm going to be putting in my chili, I've got some heated up beef broth. I'm going to use that in the very bottom of it when I put it in, because I'm going to make sure that my beans have enough liquid in there to absorb. And the other liquid I'm using then is I've got some crushed tomatoes. I canned those back in 2018. So I've got a bunch of those left because I don't do much cooking with those now. And I put a little beef broth in that to make it more liquefied. But I've got that, and I heated it up on my stove just to, warmed it up and heated it up so that when I put it in the warm jars, it won't be cold or anything like that. But I'm going to use that for my main liquid because I like my chili to be tomatoey. And but I want the beef broth for the liquid for the beans, so I'm going to put the beef broth in as I put the beans and the hamburger in, and then I'm going to fill that part up with beef broth and mix it up so that it's good and has enough liquid in there for the beans to absorb. There will be some in the crushed tomatoes, but this is just to make sure there's just a little bit more liquid in there. All right, so we're ready to go. Can our chili. Again, we're going to be doing 1.5 pints. I think I've got enough hamburger. I've got some other things that I'm going to do later on. The hamburger's already cooked up, some of it with onions, some of it without. And I've got some things we're going to do on down the road. Hey, it's cold outside. I had to make a fire in the fireplace yesterday. So it's fall. Winter's coming on, and I want to make sure that I have plenty of meals that I don't have to worry about. If I get hungry, I just heat it up and eat it. Alright, let's get started on chili on this cool fall morning. Okay, to start off with here, we're going to be putting our beans in. I've got pinto beans. Bring them over where you can see them. These are pre-washed beans. I always wash my beans before I put them in. I don't always wash them, but you're supposed to always wash your beans before you put them in. But these are pre-washed. And what I'm going to do is, when you can beans, whatever the recipe calls for, make sure that you put in that amount. Don't, if it says put in a cup of beans for a quart, when you're doing beans by themselves, put in a cup. Make sure it's a level cup. You don't want too many beans in there because it will expand. They will expand. All right. Now I'm going to do these 1/8 of a cup. I'm going to do these 3/8 of a cup, and I put them in there, and I make sure they're a level 1/8 of a cup. Put in 3 of those to each one. Now I know that doesn't look like a lot of beans, but they're going to swell up. Next, after I do my beans, I'm going to put in my hamburger. But first, I'm going to put in some beef broth. And basically what I'm going to do is cover my beans. Next we go with hamburger, and it's going to take, like I said, I'm a carnivore. Going to take a cup of hamburger per 1.5 pints. Alright, then following the hamburger, I'm going to put in some more beef broth. Just to cover the hamburger. Then I'm going to take my debubbler and I'm going to go down and make sure these are all debubbled. Being careful not to drip on my rims, because you don't want to get any of that on the rims if you don't have to. That just makes sure everything is covered with the liquid. So next we're going to do our tomatoes. Now I have some chopped tomatoes here. These are actually roasted tomatoes. And I'm going to do 3/8 cups of those. And again, this isn't exact science, because when you get them in chunks, your measurements are not precise. I've got these in a heavy sauce, so if it gets some of the sauce in it, that's okay, because I'm going to put sauce in it anyway. Alright, once we have those in, our tomatoes in, then we're going to put in our chili powder. Put in 1.5 tablespoons of chili powder. I kind of round mine up just a little bit, because I like chili powder in mine. Then we're going to add 3 tablespoons of chopped onions. Again, this is just not a precise measurement, but try not to get, when you start adding this stuff, too much, because you don't want to get your jars too full. You want to leave that head space, and you want to make sure you get all your ingredients in. So 3 tablespoons of chopped onions, next will be 3 tablespoons of chopped peppers. And again, these are a mixture of some jalapenos. They're in small chunks in here. I don't know if you can see them or not, but there's small chunks of jalapeno in there. And then there's some rehydrated and some frozen that I had. So I'm going to do 3 of these. Now keep these mixed up real good, because you don't want to overbear the jalapeno unless you really like to overbear the jalapeno. In that case, go ahead and put more jalapeno in. I used to like it that way, but I just can't take it anymore like I used to, so I've gone from super hot to just barely hot. Alright, I'm going to take my debubbler and I'm going to kind of sort these down in there a little bit. Next, I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of tomato sauce. This is some tomato sauce that I canned up here. Put in 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now, I'm not using canning salt because I'm not worried about the cloudiness. This is for flavor. So you can use canning salt, sea salt, kosher salt, whatever kind of salt you want to use. with a half a teaspoon of salt. Then I'll put in an eighth of a teaspoon of cumin and an eighth of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. That's an eighth of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Then we're going to do an eighth of a teaspoon of ground cumin. Now you want to be careful about your seasonings. Some seasonings tend to intensify during the canning process, so you might want to cut back on some stuff or not overdo the stuff beyond the recipe until after you taste it when you heat it up. You can always add more chili powder. You can always add more other spices, garlic if you want some in there, when you're heating it up. Spices can always be added heating up, and because they do kind of intensify. You need some in there for the flavor into the meat, into the beans, and the other stuff in there, but they do intensify, some of them, so you want to be careful about that. And there's some of them, I think, like sage, might even get a bit rancid in the process if there's too much of it in there. So you have to be careful with some of these seasonings. Alright, next I'm going to put a little black pepper in there. Just a little dash. I'm going to poke these down a little bit more. The key is to get all the air out of it. So you want it all to be air pockets out. And that helps in the canning process. Now as you can see, even in measuring this out like I did, the tomatoes that I put in, there was a little bit of difference in the volume of them, so you can see there's a difference here. Now to make this up, I'm putting in my crushed tomatoes. Because we want this to be an inch, and we need some more liquid in there. So this is crushed tomatoes that I warmed up, just warmed it up, with a little bit of beef broth. Leave 1 inch head space. And again, 1 inch to the bottom of this, sorry, that's my board. 1 inch to the bottom of this rim right here. That gives you 1 inch head space on the inside. And then once more, I'm going to take my debubbler. Make sure we've got it all mixed up in there. Now, as always, we wipe our rims down with vinegar whenever we're canning any kind of meat product or beans, because of the oils in them or anything actually that has oil in it. You want to make sure that you wipe down the rims. You don't want anything on that rim top that will prevent your seal. Vinegar cuts the grease, so we use vinegar. We make sure, see that on there? Make sure we get everything off the rim, because you don't want it to not seal. Then we pour our little bowl of vinegar into the canner because we have hard water, and that keeps white deposits from getting on the outside of your jar. Our lids have been soaking in hot water here. I brought the water to a boil, shut it off, and then put my lids in it. These are off-brand lids that I ordered it on Amazon. They've been doing okay. I haven't had any problem with them. They all seem to have sealed. Some of my regular mouth ones that I bought from Amazon, they buckled a little bit during the canning process, but that happens. As long as they seal good, we're good. All right. Screw it down, finger tight into the canner. And there we have our 4 pint-and-a-halfs in the canner. I know it doesn't look like it looking at it like this, but I actually did get 5 pint-and-a-halfs in that canner. I guess that's why the lid didn't close right. But anyway, four pint-and-a-halfs or 4 quarts is all this will hold. Now this is a Nesco, and there's another one, electric canner. Is it Presto? I believe it's Presto. People swear by it. It's pretty good too. I like my Nesco. It does me just fine. Does a good job. And the Presto, I think, does more. Yeah, you can put more jars in it, but that's okay. I don't need to do any more. So I like this canner. It works great. It is a canner. That's important. If you buy one of these, an Instant Pot will not work. A pressure cooker will not work. This will also pressure cook, but it is also a canner, and it's designed to can. So, and make sure it's a canner when you get it. All right, we're going to put these on. Let us set them up. Let them go. Process them for meat times, which is be 90 minutes for pint-and-a-halfs. Anything that's over the pint, you do 90 minutes to the quart. So you need to make sure you do that. If you do half pints in here, I always do my half pints the same as pints. So like I do my pint-and-a-halfs the same as quarts. It won't hurt them. All right, so we're going to get started here and get this batch done. When this one's done, I'll probably do another one. I got enough stuff left over, and I'll do another batch. Might do 3. We'll see what happens. What time and how the time goes. Now I got to clean up my mess so I can get some stuff done around here. All right, we'll be back when this is done. All right, there's my first 4 chilies, and looked like they did pretty good. Was a little bit of siphoning. As you can see down in the pan here was a little bit of siphoning. Not a lot because it didn't cloud it up very much, but you can see there was some, and that's okay. As long as my jars seal, that's the main thing. Now I'm going to let this cool down, clean this off, and I'll start prepping my other 4 jars for chili, and let my pressure canner cool down. And then I'll run the 4 more jars. Probably what I'll do when I eat these, looking at them, probably what I'm going to do is add some crushed tomatoes. I'll heat up some crushed tomatoes that I've got canned and add that to one of these to increase the liquid volume of it. Depends on how much it is. I'll wait and see when I try one, see where it goes from there. But that's probably what I'll do, is add some crushed tomatoes to it, because the crushed tomatoes are mostly liquid anyway. But should make it good. We'll see. Alright, I got 7 pint-and-a-halfs of chili. Alright, I had 8, but one of them didn't seal. So it popped into the refrigerator, and I'll be having it for supper tonight. Give me a chance to test it out and see how it is. If I need to put any more juice to it, because I like my chili a little juicy. Some people like it more thick, but I like mine a little juicy. But there we have it. 7 pint-and-a-halfs of chili ready for the winter. Alright, now I did say I had one of them chilies that didn't seal. And I've got it right here. Got a little Monterey Jack cheese spread on top of it there. A little shredded Monterey Jack cheese. It came out the perfect consistency. It looks good. Didn't have to add anything to it. Got just the right amount of bite to it. Yeah, I think this chili's going to work out just right. Well, for me anyway. So, got just the right amount of chili seasoning. Yeah, can't argue with that. So, when you make yours, if you don't like a lot of chili seasoning in there, you might want to cut that back a little bit. I did a tablespoon and a half, I believe. It's good for me, but I like mine to taste good. But you do yours for whatever's good for you. So it's better to cut back a little bit. You can always add it to it. You can't take it out. So I'm going to finish my bowl of chili here, and we'll be done. There you have it, chili in a jar. So till next time, from my house to yours, from my kitchen to your kitchen, God bless.